Hi, everyone. Welcome to SEEN, the Spiritual and Extraterrestrial Experiencers Network. My name is Donna M Atwood, and today I'm going to discuss what happened to me approximately 12 years ago after my close encounter. It was a 50-minute close encounter with an angelic being of light. But at the time, I thought it was a UAP or a UFO. And so what happened was my family and I had just returned home from vacation. And at the time, we lived in upstate New York. And our dog was sick because he missed me, his mommy. So what happened is that night I told my family, I said, well, you all go upstairs and go to bed, and I'll stay down here and sleep on the sofa with the dog. And so that's exactly what happened, except when I laid down on the sofa, I couldn't fall asleep. The dog was fine. He was just happy I was home, but I couldn't sleep. And so, eventually I just got up and I walked over to the large picture window, which overlooked our backyard. And it was, I think it was April in upstate New York, and there was still snowpack on the ground. It was just beginning to warm up. It was a beautiful evening. Night, I should say. It was late, actually. It was a beautiful night. And so I was just looking out the window. I wasn't thinking about anything. And then I decided to turn back and I guess check on the dog. So I turned my head and I looked over at the dog. And right by the dog, there was a window. And this is on the other side of the room. And I just could not believe what I saw. I was so stunned, I can't even tell you. It was this very large orb. And that's what I labeled it in my mind right away as an orb or a UFO. Or I don't even think the term UAP was that common or used much, if at all, at that point. But I was thinking UFO and orb. And I was just stunned. And so, it didn't mean to frighten me, I don't believe. But of course, I was afraid because I didn't understand what I was looking at. And the first thing I did is I grabbed the drapery of the window that I was standing at, and I pulled it over me to kind of protect myself, which is ridiculous, of course. But I was sort of peering around and looking at this. It was an angelic being of light, but of course I didn't know that. And it seemed happy to see me. So I had the sense that it was almost like an intelligent spiritual machine, maybe something that was sent by an extraterrestrial race, some sort of scout or something. I didn't really know what it was at all, okay? But it just seemed intelligent. It seemed conscious, actually. And I was just like, this is wild. So, what I wasn't going to go outside because I've heard of people getting near UFOs or UAP craft and experiencing terrible burns or other very severe health problems with regard to radiation sickness and other things that I've heard of. So I stayed inside. There was no way I was going outside. And so, it just did like this happy dance. It kind of like wiggled. It just did like this wiggle, and it just seemed happy to see me. And I just watched it. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. My phone was nowhere near, and believe me, I wasn't even thinking about the phone grabbing a cell phone or anything at the time. I thought, actually, I guess I must have had the thought very briefly, and I thought, well, if I leave, I might come back and it's gone. And that was the end of that thought. And I just stayed put. So I just ended up looking out from the window I was standing at to the other window by the dog, who was sound asleep. And I just watched this beautiful light. It was a bright white, a very cool color of white. Not silver, but tending towards that because it was so cool and brilliant. And like I said, it hovered off the ground. It never touched the ground. It didn't, fly around and then come back or anything like that. It just stayed right by the window, but kind of danced around, and it was incredible. So finally, 50 minutes went by, almost an hour, and it was really late at night at this point. And I thought, well, I'm not going outside. Thankfully, whatever it is, it doesn't seem intent on hurting me. It's not trying to come through the walls or the windows or anything like that many experiencers have either, experienced or have heard about or read about. So I thought, well, I really need to go to sleep because my family's going to be up really early in the morning and I need my rest. So it never left me. I'm the one that just finally decided to go back on the sofa and just go to sleep. And by that point, I felt relaxed. I felt love. I felt like the energy of love from it. And I just wasn't afraid at that point. So I went to sleep. I slept really well. And the next morning, I said nothing. Not a word did I say, because I'm like, well, if this is a UFO or something, there's a giggle factor with this. And I've had other experiences, so I'd always been kind of quiet about it. And it took me quite a while before I did eventually say something within the family, but I felt great the next morning. In fact, the whole day I had this tremendous sense of calm. I felt very peaceful, really unusually so, I must say. So then the next night, the dog, was still not feeling well. So it was the same routine. I slept on the sofa with the dog. I never really minded doing that. It was fine. No big deal for me. So the family went to bed. That was fine. And so I pretty much almost exactly 24 hours later, the craziest thing happened. My entire body shook. It was like a grand mal seizure, except that I was fully conscious. I was fully awake. I was in control of my head. I was able to turn my head. Maybe I could have moved my arms and legs a little. I don't know. I didn't try because my whole body was literally shaking, shaking noticeably. I didn't make any sound about it. I didn't create a fuss. I didn't yell out and frighten my family. I did not understand what was happening, but I assumed that it was somehow related to having seen, again, at that point, I thought it was a UFO. So how long did this occur? I'm not sure. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe. I certainly didn't have a clock to look at. I was focused on what was happening to me. I was also concerned about the dog. So the dog he was a little dachshund. He was very sweet, and he was sleeping behind me. So my head was closer to him, and then my feet were further away from him. So I was able to turn my head and look at the dog. And I remember his eyes were like this. He was like, what is happening to my mommy? And I just said, it's okay, mommy's okay. It's okay. He really looked scared. And then it just eventually stopped. It really didn't last that long. And nothing in my body hurt, nothing like that. It was just the oddest thing. And I didn't really know what was happening. So after that, everything was calm. I was okay. Everything was fine. So again, I eventually went to sleep. But interestingly, within 2 days, things started to change. By the way, I didn't say anything about my body shaking either right away. This whole thing was freaking me out. And not everybody is comfortable with this type of topic. And even if they are in your family, even if they care about you, you can get the giggle factor from anywhere. People just get really uncomfortable. They don't know what to say or do. So I just kind of kept my mouth shut for a while. So what happened though is a couple days later or so, it was just the oddest thing. I started developing abilities, as in clair abilities, like clairvoyance, clairaudience. So I'm just going to run through some of the things I experienced. The first thing I noticed was that I was hearing things. So that's clairaudience. So at the time, I thought I was hallucinating because I was also becoming clairvoyant. I was beginning to see entities and visions and odd things. So between hearing things and seeing things, you can imagine, I thought that perhaps I was experiencing a psychotic break. I don't have that in my my personal medical history. I have never had a psychotic break. I've never been hospitalized, excuse me, in a mental hospital or anything like that. But because I had majored in psychology in school, I was really afraid that I was losing it. Okay. But I tried to keep my mouth as quiet as I could about things that were happening. But I'm going to get into all of that in another video. Right now, I just want to cover the abilities that that I guess you would say I was gifted with after this close encounter with an angelic being of light. So then later on, I definitely realized that I was able to pick up on vibrations in a room. Like if I walked into a room from people, that's known as clairsentience. Um, um, then later on, I went to massage school. I'm sorry, because there's a couple of things I'm looking at here. Later on, a couple of years later, after all of this happened, I ended up going to massage school, and a really good school, by the way. And I was not aware that the ability known as clair tangency ever existed. I didn't know that was a thing. That's sensing through touch. So the interesting thing is, I was in an energy class, and we were doing basically the laying on of hands in energy class. And all of a sudden, I was able to hear something that this fellow student of mine was thinking or feeling or whatever. And it was just so surprising to me. I never heard of such a thing. Once again, I was questioning, what's going on? I mean, am I okay? What's the deal? So I approached several teachers, several instructors, actually, probably 4 that I can think of, maybe 5 even. And all of them explained to me that there is such a thing known as subtle energy, and that every now and then they would have a student that would come through and display these abilities. And some of them, I guess, maybe were already aware they had them and were fine with it, and other people were, well, as equally freaked out as I was. So that was another thing that came to me after having that close encounter, 50-minute close encounter with an angelic being of light. Prior to my close encounter with the angelic being of light, I did seem to have an ability where I just kind of knew things, like claircognizance is what it's called. And I will get into this again in another video, but I've had other encounters, encounters with extraterrestrials. I was picked up off a beach in Naples, Florida, which I will discuss at another time. But perhaps perhaps related to why I had the ability of claircognizance. Prior to 9/11, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I had the sense that something very significant was going to happen. I felt that it had to do with airplanes. I felt that they would fly into buildings or monuments or structures of significance, and I thought it would happen across the entire country. Things, as we all know, unfolded very differently. Everything was on the the East Coast, basically, of the United States. But I really sensed that something was going to happen. It was very profound. I knew something was coming. And I think that was literally the day before. So very interesting. So I just wanted to share with all of you what somebody who experiences something strange can go through. And this is just the beginning. I have plenty more to share with you. And the reason I'm doing this is because I have a very, very deep concern that there are other people just like myself who've had a close encounter with a UFO or UAP, or perhaps physical entities, or entities that are very high vibration, but they're energetic in nature, like an angelic being of light. And they're starting to see things and hear things and who knows what else. And they think they're going crazy, and then they end up in a mental institution or something. I just have a very, very a deep, deep concern that some people are developing really what Deepak Chopra has referred to as metahuman abilities, and they're being mislabeled as being ill. And so I wanted to just be really honest with you and share my story. I know it's a little wild, but I have wilder stories than this one. So, and I'm telling you the truth. So I wanted to share that with you. And in my next video, I'm going to discuss in much more detail many, if not everything, that I've experienced that I can remember. And it's been a very wild ride, but it is also an honor to be able to do this. And that's kind of a common thread for experiencers, is that they want to serve. They want to serve humanity, or they want to help Mother Earth, but they want to be of service. It's a very, very common thread that we see in experiencers. And so please know that I'm being guided to do the work that I do today. I hear from the divine every day at this point, and it really is a blessing and an honor to serve humanity in this capacity. I'm so pleased to do it. It is, I can't imagine doing anything else, to be honest with you. So thank you so much for watching. And again, my name is Donna M Atwood, and this is Seen, the Spiritual and Extraterrestrial Experiencers Network. So until next time, take care and be blessed. Thank you. Bye-bye.